Pelvic floor activation is one of the most important skills we're going to work on through your training with Headstrong. And the reason for that is because the pelvic floor muscle, which goes sort of underneath your pelvis, is the only muscle that really holds all of your organs sort of in place where they are, and it gets put under a lot of stress during pregnancy. So you have the extra weight of baby pressing down onto the pelvic floor, and then in addition to that, the process of labor and childbirth puts a lot of stress on that pelvic floor as well. So we want to make sure that your pelvic floor is not only strong, but that it has its full range of motion so that you're able to utilize it the way it's supposed to be used when the time comes. So in order to sort of illustrate what this muscle actually is, I'm going to use a tissue to help me illustrate. And what you're going to think about is that this tissue is the pelvic floor muscle. It's attaching to the front of your pelvis from your pubic bone at the front, to the hip bones on the side, the tailbone at the back, and then again the hip bone on the other side. And it sort of sits in your pelvis like a little bowl. And that is what holds your organs in from the bottom there. And this muscle is very strong when you let it be. And it's also very prone to be over tight, which is not helpful when we're trying to go through the process of childbirth. So in order to emphasize what you're actually doing when you're activating your pelvic floor, first let's talk about Kegels. So every woman has heard this term before. We've all tried it. And from the most part, what I've gathered is that everyone sort of understands this concept of Kegels as just sort of like clenching everything in and holding it as much as you can and just squeezing and squeezing till the end of time. And this misses an important piece, and that piece is releasing the pelvic floor so that you're working through the full range of motion. You can almost think about it like if you're working at your bicep and you're only doing bicep curls from here. You're only getting a small portion of what that muscle can actually do. You're just flexing right at the top. But if you're releasing all the way down and then curling up, you're getting the full motion of that muscle, and it's going to be stronger through its whole range. And that's what we want to do with the pelvic floor. So when you start working on your pelvic floor activations, it's helpful to sit on a chair or a box and sit on the corner so that you have a little bit of tactile feedback from underneath about what's happening in your pelvic floor. To emphasize what's actually moving while we're doing this, I'm going to use my trusty tissue, and you're going to imagine that the center of the tissue is like right in the middle of your vagina. And as we go through here, you're going to squeeze up at that pelvic floor. It's going to pull up and in. You can almost imagine it's an elevator and it's going up 2 floors. Okay, when you release, you're going to let it go. It's going to come right back down, and you're going to let it relax back down to flat. Okay, so just like that, you're going to think about pulling up and in, and then really releasing all the way, almost to the point that it feels like you might pee your pants. That's normal, but we don't want to actually go that far. It's just making sure you get that sort of release feeling on the pelvic floor. Okay. Then when we tie this in to our breathing, so we've just practiced our 360 breathing, now we're going to tie this in with the pelvic floor activation. As you inhale and expand 360 degrees through your torso, you're going to release your pelvic floor, let it relax all the way down. And then as you exhale and contract everything in, you're going to pull up and in with that pelvic floor and get that elevator activation. Let's give it a try. We'll still breathe in through our nose, big expansion. Release the pelvic floor all the way down. And then as you exhale, everything contracts in, pelvic floor comes up, and then again when you inhale, you release everything and expand again. Try that a few times on your own. If you need a little bit more feedback, you can always move further forward onto that corner and get that little bit of extra touching from that bottom part of your body from that tactile cue on the bottom.